Are you looking for a simple way to turn your land or garden into income? Today I'm going to show you a 0.43 acre property in Florida and how one of the oldest countryside hustles still works today to make money from land. All right, so for anyone who's not familiar with me, my name's Erica. I have a company, Gokce Capital, that buys and sells vacant land. Our website is gokcecapital.com. And if you want to see all of our listings, you can click Buy Land. We do have currently over 50 listings available. And I should say that on this live stream, I will share a discount code only for those who are watching the live stream. That is good until midnight tonight if anyone is in the market for land and would like a discount. All right, so we do have over 50 properties available. We are across the US, and we have properties in New Mexico, Colorado, Oregon, North Carolina, Florida, New York, and one in Georgia as well. And we're always acquiring new properties. So check out our listing page to stay up to date. You will see this is an interactive map, so you can zoom in on the areas you're interested in and click on any of the pins for a link to the property's main listing page. And below this, there is a table with a little bit of information on all of our properties. You can check on the status here too, because for all of the properties that we're selling for sale by owner, you are able to hold the property. That means you can take it off market while you do your research. And all of our for sale by owner properties also come with owner financing. We do tailor our terms to whatever works for you. So if you are interested in a property and would like to use owner financing, just reach out to us. Hi, Zaphael. It's good to see you again. Thank you for joining so many of these live streams. But yeah, if you're interested in owner financing, just reach out to us and we'll work with you. Let us know what kind of down payment and monthly payment would work for your budget. We'll work with you to make sure that it's affordable for you. And we can highlight that property. I was going to highlight a Putnam property since our free gift at the end is related to Putnam, but we can highlight the 8.75 acre property in North Carolina instead, because that does have a pond on it, which is exciting. We don't often get properties with a pond or a great asset like that. So quickly going through just a brief overview of all of our listings. We do have a number of properties in Putnam, which I wanted to highlight because the free gift at the end is related to Putnam. We have a number of properties in North Carolina as well, which I know is a very popular state at the moment. We've actually had a lot of interest in our North Carolina properties. A number of them are on hold, as you can see here. And we do have a property in checkout at this very moment in North Carolina. So we can highlight both. Yeah, I can go over both of them. And actually both North Carolina and Florida are very relevant to today's how to make money from land strategy. So I'll quickly cover both. All right, so we do have a property with a pond on it. Like all of our for sale by owner properties, and you can tell whether the property is for sale by owner or not because we have a note if the property is listed with a realtor. But most of our properties now will be for sale by owner. This one is in Nash County. It's very large. It's 8.75 acres, and it does come with a pond. And yes, we do offer owner financing on this one, like all of our properties. Nash County is, let's zoom out a bit, kind of eastern, northern North Carolina. This is the one, I don't know if you've been looking at our properties. This is the one where, so the fun thing about this property is we've actually completed the subdivision on this, which will be active in January. So it's already been approved by the county. They're just processing it. So that means that if you buy this property in January, it will actually be two separate lots. They're divided here by the road. One this is the lot, this is the portion with the pond on it, and then this is currently wooded, but would be the portion where potentially you could build. So if you buy this property, once the subdivision is official, you could either keep both properties or potentially sell one and keep the other, or sell both. So it's a good opportunity. And according to our research, there is public sewer, water, and electricity all available in the area for hookup. And yes, that's a good point, Zafael. When I say finance by owner, I mean that we are providing the financing. So you would not go through a bank. It would be through us. And that does mean that the requirements are much more lenient. We don't have like a required credit score. We don't have a minimum down payment. We'll work with you to find terms that match your budget. So like I said, according to our research, public utilities are available for connection. They're not connected at the moment, but you can work with the county to get public water and sewer and electricity, although it's always a good idea to check with the county on what that process looks like. We will have, I believe, hopefully by this weekend, a nice drone video of the whole property. But you can see here, these will each be a separate lot in the county system in January. And this is the one that has the pond on it. The only thing I'll note is that this property, because it is, it has a water feature and it is close to water, there's actually a creek back here as well. It is in a flood zone, as a number of properties in this area are. So you'll just have to comply with the flood zone regulations. But according to research, that should not prevent you from building on the property. And the zoning is A1. That's an agricultural zoning, which is very flexible. So you can build or do agricultural activities on the property. And this is located in Nash County in the town of Nashville, so check with them for more information on their zoning. But like I said, check back in another, I think the drone video should be coming in this weekend, so hopefully by Monday we'll have a nice drone video of the full property. And I also wanted to highlight a Putnam County property. So this is 0.46 acres in Putnam County. And Putnam, I've highlighted a number of Putnam counties because we do a lot of business here. It's a very affordable county in Florida. This is central North Florida, not too far from Jacksonville. And you can see it's surrounded by a number of wildlife management areas and state parks. And we have a discount code for anyone who's watching the live stream that's valid until midnight tonight. The code is live FL150 for $150 off. I'll put it in the chat for anyone who's interested in purchasing Florida land. I'll also note that you don't actually have to purchase tonight. You can hold the property and put in the code and you'll still get the $150 off. And at the end of the live stream, we have a free gift related to Putnam County as well. So stay till the end for that. But I covered North Carolina and Florida because the way to make money from vacant land that I was going to go over today is very relevant to both states. So this is one of the oldest countryside hustles around. It still works today, and it does not require a lot of equipment or development, and you can make a decent amount of money from it. And I'll show you an example. Now, what we are talking about is beekeeping and selling honey. This is an example. He's actually an NC Small Farmer of the Year, and he is a veteran. He started beekeeping because of his PTSD. So it was recommended as a way to help deal with some of his PTSD issues that came from being a veteran and serving the country. And in the first year, according to interviews, he spent $500 for 2 hives. And 4 years later, he now has 60 hives. And in the first 6 months of this year, he says he has made $250,000 just on his beekeeping business. So this is a nice side hustle that can be used on vacant land for relatively little upfront with a small upfront investment, I should say. Now, of course, you will need the right piece of land, the right zoning, hard work, and eventually more than $500 to make it work. But it is an accessible way to make some money off of vacant land without having to develop it. So I'm going to cover some of the basics of how to start beekeeping on vacant land. This is more of a very high-level overview. If there's a lot of interest in it, I can go in more detail in future live streams. So the first question is, where can beekeeping work? So the major areas where people practice beekeeping in the US would be Florida, as I mentioned. California is actually one of the biggest states. Texas, the upper Midwest, and as we see here, North Carolina and the East Coast. The best honey production is Florida, Texas, California, and the upper Midwest. And you have the greatest pollinator demand in California's agricultural belt, as well as the Pacific Northwest, Great Lakes, and Northeast. And beekeeping can work in a variety of locations, but generally you want an area that's high-level ground because you don't want a lot of moisture around your hive, but you do want to be near a consistent water source. And most importantly, you need ample nectar resources and sunlight so the bees have food and heat. And in hot climates, you'll need shade. And you will want easy access to your hives as well so that you can protect them and care for them. Now, to get started, I just did a quick Google here. Starter kits, there are plenty of places where you can get a beekeeping starter kit. It is relatively inexpensive. Generally, you want to start with at least 2 hives as a baseline, so you'll have a backup because a lot of people will fail. Their first hive or 2 will fail. So it's a good idea to start with 2 so you have at least 1 backup. And then you need a basic kit, which is going to include suit, gloves, and veil, a hive tool, a smoker, and a package of bees. The recommended starter kit that I've heard is about 3 pounds plus a queen. And then you need at least 1 what they call nuke or beehive. That would be 5 frames and a queen. So the budget you're looking at to get started is, as in our example, about $500, but it can be up to $1,000 to get started. So it's not too bad in terms of upfront costs. Now, another big question is, what can you expect to make from beekeeping? So this is a business. It's a small business, and like many small businesses, profit is going to depend on, your hard work, your skill at keeping the bees, and it also depends heavily on the market. And how large does the land need to be? It does not need to be very large, especially if you're just starting out with 2 hives. But that's going to depend on the nectar resources in the area. I I didn't find an exact estimate, but people do this in their backyard. Actually, people keep bees in cities as well. So some people have made beekeeping work in as little as 1/10 of an acre. Yeah, and Zaphael's right. It's more about the food source in the area. But, like for the bees themselves, you don't need much land. Depending on how much you want to scale it up. If you're looking at a large operation, you're going to need a couple acres. But, people do it on a small amount of land. In terms of what you can expect to make, so the estimate that I've seen in terms of honey production, say estimate between 60 to 100 pounds of honey per hive per year. But again, that's going to vary on your experience and then the kinds of plants, the food source that you're able to provide. Raise killer bees if you don't like your neighbors. Well, that's one way to keep people from developing the land around you. And in terms of prices of honey, here's a March 2025 regional honey price report from Bee Culture. Prices are going to vary, like with many products, depending on how you sell your honey. As a small business owner, you're going to want to be retail because the wholesale prices are they're wholesale prices. It's a small dollar amount per pound. So it only works for large operations. But retail prices can be between $12 and $20 per pound on average. So if you do the math, like with a startup, 2 hives at 80 pounds of honey per hive and say $15 a pound, you could make $2,400 a year. So this is not necessarily a get-rich-quick scheme, but it can be a nice supplement to your existing income for a relatively small upfront cost and not too much additional work per year. And there's also, the nice thing is there are a lot of resources for beekeeping. Most areas where beekeeping is popular have local beekeeping clubs. So like when starting any business, it's a good idea to first get involved with your local club or find a group of people who are already keeping bees. So you can't do this remotely. No, this would need to be hands-on unless you're hiring someone to manage your hives for you. But cost-wise, that's not going to make sense unless you have a pretty large operation. Yeah, beekeeping for a lot of people is actually more of a hobby than a business. A lot of people do it because they actually enjoy working with bees. But yes, like you're dealing with live animals, so you can't do it remotely. Unless you're raising AI bees, I guess. The USDA does have a number of resources that for anyone who wanted to turn it into a serious business could look into. And actually, it's good to know about these resources for agriculture in general because the USDA has a number of great programs, both small loan and small grant programs for smaller scale farmers. So they have some micro farm programs as well. They provide a whole farm revenue protection program, which is sort of like a risk management safety net for all commodities, including honey. And this is for any farm with up to $8.5 million in insured revenue. And they do offer loans, not specifically for beekeeping, but beekeeping would fall under their farm umbrella. So a lot of their loans and grants potentially would work for a beekeeping operation. So like they have a farm loan program. So if you can qualify as a family farm, then you might be eligible for a program like this. They have microloan programs as well. So these are operating and ownership loans to serve new niche and small to mid-sized family operations. They have some grant programs as well. These are primarily designed to benefit small businesses, in particular like direct-to-market businesses or direct-to-consumer, producer-to-consumer marketing, things like that. So if you are seriously looking at beekeeping as a business, it might be worth checking in with your local USDA office to see what programs you could potentially qualify for with your operations. Now, it is important also to keep in mind, and yeah, what properties do we have that might be eligible for beekeeping? I can cover that as well. Like I said, that's why I did want to highlight North Carolina and Florida, because both of those are states where beekeeping can be done, and we have a lot of properties in both of those states. The other important thing to note in this high-level overview is that you do want to check zoning regulations. Beekeeping is not necessarily development, so you're not going to have the same kind of regulations you would if you, say, wanted to build a house. But you may have some requirements that you have to comply with depending on where you are. For example, here's a California site. This site is nice because they have a full master list of county and local regulations. But you can see, like in California, you do have to register. The fee's not that large, but you do have to register your hives. So keep that in mind. And then, you can look through the master list to see. But a lot of the regulations, is this not loading? Yeah. A lot of the regulations are sort of like distances from homes. Now, some residential areas are not going to allow beekeeping. So that's important to keep in mind. But like, for example, in Union City, there's no municipal code. So just check. I actually should have, but I did not look up Putnam County specifically. But we can do that, and I can put it in the comments. And that's a good point. Beekeeping is nice because it's not reliant on the soils. So as we've covered in some previous live streams, sometimes there are soils that are not so great for building, but that would not be a problem with beekeeping. So this is one use you can put land to that has poor soils. And you also do not need to live on the property to raise bees. It might help because bees do require a fair amount of care, but you don't actually have to live on the property. And if you're doing a very large scale bee operation, you very well may not live on the property. You may use it primarily for raising bees. But you can live nearby. And my team did want me to cover what properties we have that might work for beekeeping, and the answer is a lot of them. So Florida and North Carolina are both good states for beekeeping. And all of our properties, or most of our properties, are rural. So that would mean they're more likely to be eligible for beekeeping. Can I hire a bee sitter if I'm on vacation? Theoretically, if there's someone in the area who's experienced at it. That's another reason why it might be a good idea to join a local beekeeping group, because then you can have a group of friends who can help you take care of your bees if you go on a long vacation. So we do have our Florida properties, our North Carolina properties, Oregon, the Pacific Northwest is another good area for beekeeping. We don't have any California properties at the moment, but that's a key state for beekeeping as well. So that's a basic overview. If there's a lot of interest in this, I can go into more detail on how you would actually manage a hive, especially in colder climates. There are overwintering concerns, things like that. Can you raise bees in the desert? That's a good question, like in New Mexico. Well, let's see. The north, you can. So here's what I quickly found. Bees aren't, a nice thing about bees is that they're not that picky about climate. They do exist in most ecosystems. The main limiting factor is forage. So you got to make sure that you have enough food for them, enough flowers that produce nectar and pollen. Oh, what is beekeeping? So beekeeping is raising bees with the intent of producing honey. So you're raising bees in man-made beehives, essentially, and you're collecting the honey. Well, the bees, can we show some photos? Yeah. So the bees will fly away, but they will come back to their hive. So you don't really have to worry about that. I'm not going to go into too much detail about the mechanics of hive control today, because we're actually almost out of time. Eventually, when the hive grows large enough, they will swarm, so they'll leave the hive. So you'll have to manage that, by creating a second hive before they start to do that. But you don't really have to worry about bees running away. They want to come back to their hive. So as long as you're providing a decent hive environment for them, they will leave. They'll go forage for nectar, and then they'll come back to their hive. Yep, they follow the queen, that's correct. So another comment, allowing people to store RVs, boats, or other stuff on your property is also not a bad idea if zoning allows it. And yeah, that's a good point. That is another great way to make some money off of vacant land, and I can cover that in an upcoming live stream. And I can also do a deeper dive on beekeeping tomorrow, because we are almost out of time today, and I just covered the basics. But there are a lot of mechanics. As Claudia mentioned, the hive follows the queen. So as long as there is a healthy queen in your hive, they will stay there as long as the population hasn't grown large enough, or it hasn't produced a new queen. But we can go over some of these details on how to manage the hive and manage a growing hive tomorrow. I would like to understand the bee psychology on why they wouldn't fly away. Because the queen doesn't fly away, usually, unless it's a new queen, in which case they will what's called swarm. So the new queen will leave the hive, and a big group of the bees will follow the queen looking for a new location. And bees scare me because I hear about mites and stuff. And that's another important point, which I can cover tomorrow. You do have to manage mites. They are a big issue, and they can kill off your colony. And so you still have to find the original queen. What if there are two queens and they fight? Well, that's another part of managing the hive. So generally, your starter, yep, it is like Game of Thrones. Generally, when you get a starter kit, it comes with one queen. And as long as there's one queen, you won't have an issue. Eventually, as the hive gets large enough, a new queen, it'll produce new queens. And so you either have to harvest those queens, remove them, and put them in new hives before, because what'll happen is if a new queen is born, they'll either fight with the existing queen or you'll have swarming behavior where a bunch of the bees will leave with the new queen looking for a new hive. There is no bee king, no. I'm sure there are a lot of jokes that you could make about that. But yeah, so you have to manage as your colony grows, you have to manage the production of new queens. I can cover that, like I said, tomorrow. In the meantime, since we did talk about Putnam County, we do have a free gift. Not yet, you mean? Well, you can try and breed a bee king. You want to get into beekeeping? So we do have a free gift. It's a little guide on why Putnam County is a great place to buy land. The link to this is in the description. I'll have it in a pinned comment, as well as a link to our main listing page, which has all of our properties, including, of course, North Carolina and Florida properties where you can do beekeeping. And tomorrow I'll go into a little more depth on beekeeping. And then in upcoming live streams, Raphael had a good suggestion about allowing people to store RVs, boats, or other stuff on your property as a way to make money. So I'll cover that in upcoming live streams as well. It was great to see so many people here today. Raphael, thank you for joining so many of these. Claudia, it's great to see you again as well. If anyone has any suggestions for topics they would like me to cover, I am happy to cover them. And any questions, of course, feel free to ask during the live streams. I'll be here again tomorrow at 2 p.m. Eastern.